We are the Guinea Pig Collective. All will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Searching for old treasures, blowing off the dust. Timeless stories and legendary characters. This is Talking Movies. Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another Talking Movies. Now today on Talking Movies, we are going to be going back to the well yet again, and I am going to finish off talking about 1986's Transformers, the movie. Now, while author Stephen Walton and myself had an extremely cool and pretty in-depth live stream about the movie, there were a lot of subjects that I just never got around to touching on. And it's one of those things that just kind of happens when you have a live stream. You know, certain questions may just get pushed aside because you got the other person who has their views and you want to talk about them. So things wind up getting overlooked. Now, while I did talk about the fact that the toys were made after the movie was already in production, what I didn't talk about is, first off, why certain characters may have been left alive and why other ones were just never seen in the movie or hinted on. So I am going to try to do my best to get to all of them with a good proper explanation, the best that I can. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to talk about the original line, which was the 1984 line. So the original 1984 line consisted of 18 Autobots, 6 minicars, Brawn, Bumblebee, Puffer, Windcharger, Cliffjumper, and Gears, 11 standard Autobot cars, Wheeljack, Trailbreaker, Ironhide, Ratchet, Hound, Mirage, Sunstreaker, Jazz, Sideswipe, Blue Streak, and Prowl, and of course, their leader, Optimus Prime. Now, the original Decepticons released in that first wave only numbered 10, and that is if you count Buzzsaw as his own entity. Technically, he came with Soundwave, so he would have been considered one toy, but since there were 2 Decepticons in the box, there were 10 total Decepticons, and they included the cassettes of Rumble and Frenzy, Ravage and Laserbeak, the 3 Decepticon planes, Thundercracker, Skywarp, and Starscream, and of course the communications officer Soundwave with Buzzsaw and the almighty Megatron. And following on the heels of Wave 1 and Wave 2, you've seen all those same characters re-released with all new characters to accompany them. And as I touched on in the live stream, it was this 84 line, the first wave that they were looking to kill off because they were not going to be reproducing them. And the 84 line wasn't the only one that they were going to stop producing. There was many figures from the 85 line as well that were not going to be continued in the 86 line, which included all of the standard Autobot cars, all of the original mini cars except for Bumblebee. Now, the 85 line of mini cars that were added were, however, going to be continued in the 86 line. Those figures included Power Glide, Cosmos, Beachcomber, Warpath, and Sea Spray. The 86 line would also see the end of production for both Skywarp and Thundercracker, as well as one of Soundwave's cassettes, Laserbeak. Now, the 2-pack of Rumble and Ravage were both continued, and Frenzy wound up being paired with Ratbat, who was added to the 86 line. And yes, Soundwave was also continued in 86, as well as having Buzzsaw with him. Now, one of the other Decepticons that was not going to make it to the 86 line was Shockwave. Now, Shockwave was actually licensed out to Hasbro from Toyco of Korea, who also licensed it off to Radio Shack as Galactic Man and another toy company who named them Magnum. The reason Shockwave was no longer going to be included is because the licensing agreement, from what I understand, ran out. So with that starting off, you may be wondering, well, what about Jazz and Cliffjumper, whom we both see at the end of the movie? Jazz is a very simple explanation because in 1986, he was offered as a special mail-away premium figure, and that premium was tied in with the cereal Cookie Crisp. Now, since Hasbro had just partnered up with General Mills through their Cookie Crisp brand, there's no way that they were going to kill off a character in their movie who was tied in with another company. This would just not be a good marketing strategy. Now, as far as why Cliffjumper is seen at the end of the movie, there is a pretty simple explanation of why. Now, since a lot of the people that were working on the movie did not understand all the characters that very well, obviously when they killed off Prime and Megatron, they really didn't expect to receive that kind of backlash, especially for Prime. So them not knowing the toys as well, and obviously there's been a lot of miscoloring and animation mistakes, just like Sunbow always does. It was most honestly a simple mistake that they mistook Hubcap, the new character from the 86 line, who was very similar in appearance to Cliffjumper, as just being a recolored version of him. And it would explain why you really didn't see that character when Sunbow had released the next series of cartoons. And of course, there were a few other characters that just weren't mentioned, two of which were licensed out by another company once again, that being Whirl and Roadbuster. Neither one was coming back because there was no licensing agreement to extend them in the Transformers line. As well as one of the leftovers from the Diaclone era, which were the Jump Starters, Twin Twist and Topspin. Neither were being reproduced for the 86 line. And although there was never a toy shelf release of him, the trio of Decepticons known as Reflector were not going to be reproduced or offered again as a mail-away after 1986, hence they became disposable characters, and I am going to get into that in 1 second. Now, it is easily understandable why so many of these characters were killed off in the movie, since the toys were not going to be continued in the 1986 line. But what about some of those characters who were missing from the animation and we just didn't really know what happened to them? Well, obviously, knowing now, they are all dead.
Rest in peace.
And you know what? It's one of those things that you could speculate what happened to them. So I'm going to speculate some of the ones that you didn't see on screen, or there was not even a hint that they could have been there. I am assuming that they were killed before the movie. Now you're probably wondering, well, why would you say that? It's a very simple explanation. If you look at the Dinobots, one of their members is missing. Snarl. Snarl is nowhere to be seen, because when we see the Dinobots, there are only 4 of them. Hence, he had to have died before the movie even started. And this is an easy way to explain away a lot of the Autobots that we just never see in the movie. In the beginning of the movie, we actually see a few Autobots killed. We see Brawn, Prowl, Ratchet, Ironhide.
Such heroic nonsense.
And later on, we see the dead bodies of both Wheeljack and Windcharger.
Come on, RC! We gotta get this launcher into place!
However, this is not the only Autobots that we've seen in the beginning of the movie that we know are dead. There was also Hound, Sunstreaker, Huffer, and Bluestreak. Now, what is kind of funny about a few of these guys is there's animation problems with how they were put into the movie. So we have the scene where Hot Rod is talking to Daniel and they're going to go up to Lookout Mountain. So they go to run the roadblock that Cup and the other Autobots are setting up. And who is there? Huffer, Blue Streak, and Hound. And you're probably saying, okay, no big deal, so what? Well, after he breaks through and he's going up the road, we see Cup again, mouthy young punk, and while he's looking, we see Sunstreaker also in the picture. And you're probably still thinking to yourself, well, you still haven't answered the first question. I am getting to that right now. So why we see them early on, when Prime is radioed by Blaster and shows up in the shuttle, the first thing he does is he sends the Dinobots off. He sends the Dinobots off and then he lands. Once he lands, he comes out of the loading bay of that ship, and who is standing next to him? Hound and Sunstreaker. And as seen here, Sunstreaker was piloting the ship, so there was no way he could have been on the ground with Cup and the other Autobots if he was coming from Cybertron. And in the battle scene, we see Perceptor, and in the background, we see Grapple. But with another animation goof once again, because this battle takes place before the shuttle comes down. And whose legs do we see running across the screen? They would belong to Swoop. Now, obviously, if Swoop is on the shuttle with the other Dinobots, there's no way, once again, that he can already be on the ground. Now, as far as other animation problems with this movie, we have one where we have this little guy running across the screen who's all red, and the only figure that I can associate him to would be one part of Reflector. Another one shows Shockwave flying into the scene. I didn't think that Shockwave was part of the original party that was coming to Autobot City, but who knows? Maybe he was there, maybe he wasn't, maybe they just made a mistake, because he is not seen again until the coronation of Starscream. Now I am going to wind up talking about one of the biggest mysteries that everybody has seemed to have thrown their 2 cents into since this movie first came out.
Exterminate him!
And that would be, who is Cyclonus? Now obviously it's pretty easy to see that Scourge is Thundercracker. And as seen in some of the photos, we can see that there's Kickback, there's Shrapnel, there's Bombshell. Now, although we wind up seeing both Shrapnel later on, and we also see Kickback during the coronation of Starscream, we can probably safely assume that these were clones of the original Insecticons that wound up biting the bullet and were thrown out of Astrotrain. Or maybe the clones are actually the ones that are at the coronation and later on in the movie, who knows. Either way, one set is a clone, the other is not, and they became sweeps. But the biggest one is Cyclonus. Now, there's a lot of people who will tell you that it is Skywarp, but let's start off with Scourge. So when he transforms, the first one to transform is Thundercracker, or at least what was Thundercracker. He transforms into Scourge, so we know that he is Scourge. So let's go to the animation of Cyclonus.
Cyclonus.
And what do we see? The same thing yet again. The first bot, when mentioned and named, transforms. That would be Bombshell. Now, there's going to be some people who are going to say, no way, it just can't happen like that. But let's look at the figure stats from the original toys, shall we? The original bios as well. So first off, it is to be noted, and I actually talked about this in a previous video, that the numbers, the stat numbers for the figures of Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker were all swapped. They were all mixed up. And the easiest way to tell that is if you look at Starscream's number, he's listed as having 7 strength, 7 intelligence, 9 speed, and a 5 rank. So actually, the only numbers you really need are intelligence, speed, and rank. Intelligence 7, speed of 9, rank of 5. Starscream is listed as being the fastest flyer of the group, and he is also listed as the aerospace commander. Now, as far as Thundercracker, there is nothing really overly defining that would actually say anything about his stat numbers, but he's listed as a 4 intelligence and a speed of 9. However, how it all comes into play is when you look at Skywarp. Skywarp is listed as a 9 intelligence, a 10 speed, and a 9 rank. But if you read his bio, Skywarp is the sneakiest of all Decepticons, enjoys playing cruel pranks on his fellow Decepticons and appearing out of nowhere. But the most important thing is they say he is not too smart. So, if Skywarp is the least intelligent out of the group, that means Thundercracker's bio goes to Skywarp. Skywarp's bio, which has a speed of 10 and a rank of 9, would go to Starscream, and Starscream's would go to Thundercracker. At this point, you're probably thoroughly confused and wonder, why did I just have to go through that again? Well, it's actually kind of pertinent when you look at the toy stats for Cyclonus. Cyclonus is listed as a saboteur. And Cyclonus is also listed, of course, as a huge air warrior. He has high intelligence, high skill, and is listed as emotionless. So if you are comparing Bombshell to Skywarp, Bombshell has higher intelligence, he has a higher skill range. Hence, it would just make more sense, especially since he is the first one to transform when the name Cyclonus is mentioned. Now, the funny thing is you only see the secondary Cyclonus in that initial frame. You don't see him again after that, and that extra Cyclonus apparently just becomes another sweep. So if you're looking at from the status of being a sweep, the sweeps were pretty brainless for the most part. Skywarp would fit right into that category. And it only seems to make more sense when you look at Scourge's number, because once again, Scourge has a fairly high intelligence rating, just like Thundercracker did. To me, with the animation and with the stat numbers, it only makes sense that Bombshell wound up becoming Cyclonus. Now, as I just mentioned, we only see the second Cyclonus once after they are first created, and then you never see him again. And it is obviously that he must become one of the sweeps. So, one of the sweeps is actually destroyed by Grimlock as they're leaving what left the ruins of Autobot City. There is, however, still 4 sweeps there when they go to terminate Magnus. Are all 4 of them sweeps, or is one of them Scourge? That means that there are 3 sweeps and Scourge. So if one is Skywarp, one is Kickback, who we see on the way to Unicron, plus Shrapnel as well. That accounts for 3 of the sweeps. In a few scenes, though, it appears that there are a few more. So, where did the extra ones come from? I actually have a small explanation for that. Because in the beginning battle scene movie, when they're heading up and Megatron's getting ready to call for Devastator to destroy it, we see one part of Reflector. And also in this scene, you see that red reflector that I mentioned earlier. Now towards the end of the movie with the coronation, we see 1/3 of Reflector at the coronation, yet we do not see the others. And I am assuming, because of the way the back looks on the guy at the coronation, that this was Viewfinder, which means the other 2 are missing. And it would just seem kind of odd that he only would have took one part of the team with him. Hence, it just makes sense that in the background, the other 2 perished and were thrown out of Astro Train and became sweeps as well. One of which perished by way of me, Grimlock. And with that, we have a more reasonable explanation to all the extra sweeps that were there. Now, as far as if they had more sweeps and who they could have been, since Laserbeak's toy was not continued, it could be surmised that Laserbeak was one of the sweeps as well. And let's not forget about Insecticons that we have never seen because of the other toy company that licensed them off to Hasbro, and that was the Deluxe Insecticons. Now, since we actually never see the Deluxe Insecticons, much the way we don't see a couple other figures, it could be surmised that maybe, just maybe, they wound up being in the lot of Decepticons that were destroyed or damn near destroyed at Autobot City and wound up becoming sweeps as well. This is the best explanation that I could come up with for why there were always so many sweeps, that these were other figures that were no longer going to be part of the line, whether they were just one-time mail-aways or whether they were licensed off figures. Anyway, guys, that's all I have on this one. Did you find this one interesting? Did you learn anything new? Or possibly are you in complete disagreement with me over Cyclonus being originally Bombshell? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And of course, my friends, as always, I am oh so happy that you are here and that you spent time on the channel. I truly do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed what you've seen and what you heard, go ahead and destroy that like button for me. And if you are new to the channel, welcome. I am glad that you are here. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself so far. Maybe check out some of my other videos too if you're not sure, and if you like what you see and what you hear, that you will consider subscribing to the channel. We would greatly appreciate it. And remember, guys, never let anybody tell you what you can and can't do, what you can and can't watch, what you should and shouldn't say, because your silence gives consent. And I will catch you all next time. Later, y'all.